hello everybody.
Hello,
I'm John O'Farrell from Andreessen Horowitz. It's nice to be back in sunny Dublin. I actually grew up here. And for those of you who are not from Dublin, it's always like this. So that's why I moved to California. It's my pleasure to interview Linden Tibbets, the founder and CEO of IFT. You've heard actually a couple of times in the last few minutes about if this, then that. Well, IFT is I-F-T-T-T, if this, then that, pronounced like gift. But we've heard a few other pronunciations along the way. We're happy to be investors in IFT, invested in the company about almost 2 years ago right now, Linden. And I'm happy to be on the board. What we usually do when an entrepreneur like Linden comes in and pitches us in our pitch room at the office, they'll always want to immediately tell us about the idea. And we'll say, wait, go back. We want to talk about you, because fundamentally we're investing in a person and not an idea. So let me start off with Linden.
Sure.
By tell the audience about yourself.
Sure. So I'm originally from Texas, a little town called Duncanville, just south of Dallas. I knew from a really young age that I wanted to be in Silicon Valley. No, really, I actually did. I was obsessed with programming, and so I think for most kids obsessed with programming, the end goal was video games or 3D animation, and I knew there were both of those in Electronic Arts and Pixar out in the Valley. So was able to get into a small school named Santa Clara in San Jose out there in Silicon Valley. Did computer engineering. After that, did live the dream briefly at Electronic Arts. I was engineer, I think it was about 220 on a console port of The Sims 2 at Electronic Arts, and that was the type of experience that really drove me, I think in a good way, to actually trying to find something creative to do with technology, and that got me into design. Then was at a design firm IDEO in Palo Alto for 3 years, and from there, that's where IFT came on board.
Cool. Before we go to IFT, I understand that you were quite a basketball star in college. I don't know how many Americans were in the crowd, but Linden played NCAA level, which is serious level, college sports level. So love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well,
I'd say certainly tall enough for it.
Being really into computers and also being 6'9" is an awkward combo. So I was actually a whole lot better with computers than basketball. But I was on the team. In fact, my first day in computer engineering at the school there at Santa Clara, the dean of the school told me there was no way I was going to graduate and be a computer engineer. I made it. I think I scored all of 10 points in my college career. So,
we're glad that you chose IFT over a basketball career. So let's. Many people in the audience will not be familiar with IFT. I think within a couple of years, IFT will be a household name. But why don't you explain what IFT is in simple terms for those who don't know it?
So I think the genesis of the idea was really hatched during my time at IDEO and really observing how people use things in the physical world. We have so much of what I call this intuitive creative control over objects in our physical world. We're able to do things like take a pencil and put it behind your ear to free your hands up, or take off your glasses and put them in your shirt like this when you go in a store so you don't have your sunglasses on. We're constantly modifying objects or combining objects in our physical environment to solve small little problems. And this is something everyone does hundreds of times per day, right? They're not hackers, they're not inventors, this is just how the real world works. And that same level of intuitive creative control is really missing once we get to this abstract digital place, the internet, apps, and applications. And so we felt there was a real opportunity to give people that creative control, and that was especially relevant as we saw the digital world on this collision course with the physical world. And I'm sure we've heard Internet of Things a number of times today and this year. And so how that works, we allow people to make simple connections between two services. We call those services channels. Some example connections would be, for instance, one that I use every morning. I get the weather sent to me as a text message. I ride my bike to work, and so if it's raining, I know not to ride my bike to work.
Before you go on to another example, let's just talk about, so what's involved in, that sounds like a very simple thing, but what is IF doing to create that specific offering for you? Text message with the weather.
Yeah, so that connection is called a recipe. Recipes are again, simple connections between channels. Folks have set up 16 million of these recipes so far. We have millions of folks doing this. We have 140 channels right now. We're adding channels at the rate of a couple a week, so hopefully that continues to accelerate over the next couple months.
In the case of the weather and the text message, what are the channels there, and what are you connecting?
Sure. So with weather and text message, it's well, we have a channel called the weather channel and a text message channel. So that one's really easy. But it could be another good example would be something that's not so obvious. So you could say every time you get an email from your boss, get a notification. So I could say every time I get an email from John O'Farrell, and I would use a Gmail channel to do that.
But it sends to the trash. No,
yeah, well, not right to the trash. I get that as an iOS notification with high urgency.
Let's say you wanted to get that as a phone call instead. Could you do that?
Of course. Yeah. And I think that's really the beauty of it. It puts that power in the user's hands. They get to decide. They get that creative control about how they get to mix and match things.
So basically, the idea is any service I have on the internet and any other service I use on the internet, I can combine them in exactly the way I want.
Sure, exactly.
Give us some other examples of that.
Sure, so another good example, like I will talk about a couple that I did just this last couple of weeks. I've been looking for a really tall bike, so back to the height thing. I was looking for a bike that was 64 centimeters specifically tall, and so I did a search on both Craigslist and eBay, and had anytime someone put a bike 64 centimeters tall for sale on any of those services, I got an email digest of those. Another great example, and something that's been really popular lately, we just reintroduced a lot of neat things you can do with Twitter. So say, for instance, you had a small business and you wanted to track mentions of your coffee shop or your record store on Twitter. You could get those as a digest, or you could store them in Evernote, or you store them in Dropbox. And so that freedom of choice is really up to you as the user.
Very cool. I remember you, when you came into us and pitched, I believe you talked about the idea of having an if channel, if you're an app developer or a major brand for that matter, having an if channel becoming as indispensable as having an app.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I thought that was a pretty ambitious goal at the time. In fact, I thought it was a crazy goal. But we like crazy goals. That's why we invest in crazy people who have crazy goals. But it feels like you're well on your way to getting there.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer.
How many channels do you have now on
so 140 channels. 140. We're adding a couple of those every week now. So we've got
a backlog, I gather.
Yeah, we've got a platform that's been quite popular. So we're allowing developers now to build and launch those channels themselves. And so I think that's been phenomenal. And I think just like at first as any kind of brand, you needed to have a website, and then now you've got a website, and now you've got to have an iOS app and an Android app. We think at some point, and I think we're like you mentioned, really close to it, you're going to really have to have an if channel. You're going to have to have a way for consumers to tap into your service, almost like a developer could with an API.
Very interesting. You were rattling off some statistics, and I interrupted you to talk more about a recipe. So give me a sense of or give the audience a sense of how big is IF at this stage in terms of stats.
Sure. Yeah, so we have, like I mentioned, we have millions of users. They've created 16 million recipes so far. Those recipes collectively run about 18 million times per day. So if you got a text message about the weather, that would be one. We talked about 140 channels. We have, for folks that don't know exactly what they want to do, that aren't actually able to kind of complete the if, this, and that, don't worry. We have nothing against you. In fact, we think that's the majority of folks. We have an amazing thing we call published recipes. So think of those as templates that other people have discovered and really published back to the community. And at that point, it's really just as easy as clicking a button to get up and running with it.
Great. Linden, we're on the machine stage, and machines. How do machines and devices enter into this? Internet of Things we hear about all the time. But
Sure.
tell me, what's your, my partner, Mark Andreessen, sometimes says, is this going to be the Internet of Things or just a bunch of things on the internet? And in other words, is it going to be a system or just assorted devices that are all connected, which it is increasingly. So what do you think? How do you think about IoT specifically?
I think where we are now, it is just a bunch of things on the internet, and it's an increasing number of things on the internet. I really think there's three phases. That first phase is just about how do we get this stuff online. Take anything around you, every piece of clothes you're wearing, everything you've sat on today, maybe even a lot of the things you've eaten today. There's no reason why those things at some point on some timeline aren't going to be connected to the internet. It's just inevitable. It's going to be cheap enough. Mm-hmm. And so who's going to really get to decide the value of the connections? And we think that's real people. And so that's the first phase. We're just going to connect stuff. The second phase is really about starting to gather a lot of interest around some of the big hubs. We've got, your phone is a hub right now, so your iPhone. You've got probably a cable box, that's a hub. You've got probably 100 other people talking about their hubs, as well as other big kind of name brand products. Nest has a great ecosystem. And so you're going to start to see these groups of devices starting to make connections between these ecosystems. And we still don't think that's good enough. I think in that third phase is where we'll really start to see people able to make connections across any of these devices. And it's not just connections across devices, it's really those devices wrapped in a service. And that service behaves a whole lot like Twitter and Facebook and Gmail do right now. And so it's going to be making connections between devices and traditional web services. And so I think that's really what that third phase is about. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the value come out for consumers.
Uh-huh. IFT already works with a bunch of devices, right, as well. I mean, you guys are well on your way. Mm-hmm. So maybe give me a few examples of Internet of Things and how IFT plays in that space.
Sure. So we have a number of wearables, folks like JawBone and Fitbit. And so we've seen a lot of people do things like every time you meet your step goal, log that to Evernote or track that on a Google Calendar. Or if you want to get social with it, every time, let's say, for instance, I only got 5 hours or less of sleep at night. If I wanted to post on Facebook and Twitter and tell people to watch out, I was on one. I've only got about 5 hours of sleep. So we've seen some people do that as well. I think a great example for sports fans out there, and one of the things I do at home is with the Philips Hue light bulbs. Every time the San Francisco Giants, the baseball team there in San Francisco, comes on, turn the lights orange. Let everyone at home know it's game time. So these are just simple connections, and so I think it really just goes from there as all these things come online.
Uh-huh. Why can't these individual device vendors like, I don't know, JawBone or whatever, they all have their own app, right? And the big players like Apple or Google or Nest or anybody, and Nest being part of Google now, as you mentioned, like they're doing a lot of this themselves. Mm-hmm. Why is there a need for IFT in that world, both for the little guys as well as the big guys?
Sure. So just like you still need a website, and people still go to your website, and we think you're still going to need an app. So we're not someone that's saying, oh, well, it's silly that there's a specific app for every device. I think there's actually good reasons to have an app for lots of these devices. I also don't think there's one app to rule them all, one interface by which you're going to turn off all your lights and control all the things in your home or control your services. Mm-hmm. I think it's really a combination of those, and it's a realization that all these devices coming online are really services. So again, kind of back to this thing that your light bulbs now with Hue, your car, with lots of other examples there, are behaving a lot more like Twitter and Facebook. And so I think what's really interesting there is that then allows an opportunity to aggregate across those, to be able to connect to all those inputs and outputs in various combinations. So we talked a lot about this idea of if, this, and that, and kind of this one-to-one connection. We think there's lots of other ways to make connections, and we think the ways to make those connections gets a whole lot smarter over time.
Interesting. So the idea is basically that even a big player like, I don't know, Apple or Samsung or Google or whatever is not going to be able to anticipate and provide for every individual way that you or I as individuals want to connect their device to this internet service or this piece of hardware or whatever else. And so having this big, like, I guess, router in the sky or something, some way to think about it, that allows me to connect exactly as I want.
Sure.
That'll always exist, and in fact, it'll become a greater need given the explosion of things on the internet and how we live our lives today.
Of course, and I think it starts with giving individuals that control to make those connections for themselves. I think that evolves into being able to recommend, hey, we noticed you have this kind of connected toaster and you've got a Tesla in the garage, and you've got this connected garage door opener, and here's some neat things you might do with those.
So actually anticipating, suggesting, in other words.
Yeah.
So that brings us to my last question, I think, as we're almost out of time here. What can we expect to see from IFT in the coming months and years, for that matter? Sure.
So the platform continues to evolve. For the folks already on the platform, thanks for being patient with it. I think it's something that's getting better all the time. We're seeing, like I said, now a couple people launch per week. So that's been phenomenal. We're working towards opening that platform for everybody to jump on board. We're also looking at, like I mentioned before and alluded to, entire new ways to make connections, essentially recipes beyond just if this and that, whether those are more complex or we think some are even simpler. Also, being able to recommend or even autocomplete recipes on the fly. We have now thousands and thousands of people making a connection. Say you're a brand and you've got an Instagram account. Posting those Instagram photos to your Facebook brand page. And at least to my knowledge, you still can't do that in Instagram, which is really funny. And we have so many brands now representing themselves through Instagram and their Facebook page. You can imagine we can detect, okay, we've noticed for the last 3 times you've posted on Instagram and on Facebook, you're really just taking your Instagram photo and posting it to Facebook. Can we do that for you automatically? Yes or no? And so I think that's kind of a logical next step. And then the final thing, we're really working towards premium accounts, an ability for end users to pay per month for something above and beyond. So things like multiple accounts per channel and some of these other types of recipes that I alluded to.
So if today is free, and it'll probably always be free,
sure,
I would imagine,
sure,
but you could pay for a higher level of service?
Yeah, so IFT will always be free for the end user, and it'll be free for the developer to launch a public channel. We also think there's some really interesting opportunities to build a business around the developer side of things, especially as you think about opening up access to developers, not just to plug in and register their service or their device, but also to be able to access some of those services and devices, those inputs and outputs in aggregate.
Great. I think we're officially out of time. Do we have time for a question or not? I'm asking our staff. Okay. Question, if there is one. Yes, here in the front.
Where do you see all this fitting in on the artificial intelligence spectrum? At what point do I try to open my fridge door and it won't let me because it knows I'm on a diet and I'm not supposed to?
Sure.
If just fitting into that space, have you projected forward?
Maybe
sure.
Repeat the question first, because many people can't hear it probably.
So the question was, how does it fit into artificial intelligence? And how soon will it be? Or you go to try to open your refrigerator door and the refrigerator door says no, or some artificial intelligence says no, you're not sticking to your diet. So I think it actually fits in really well. It's not something we're actively working on, but I think as you kind of project out 5 or 10 years, or maybe even sooner. And I think a really great example of this is the movie Her, right? So you've got this AI, and it's really like an operating system. It does anything for you. It sends an email to your boss. It opens your front door. It tells you should or shouldn't open the refrigerator. For any of that to be possible, there has to exist this foundational layer of inputs and outputs. Everything all in one place. And all those things access controlled. Can you unlock this door you're standing in front of? What's in your refrigerator? Did you get an email from your boss? It's all these things together in one place. And so we think about what we're doing as really that foundation for this future operating system. And whether it's Scarlett Johansson who talks to you like her, I don't know. But I think that's certainly a possibility.
My understanding of IFT is you always want to allow personal control, so you could set up a recipe, maybe in that case, saying if my refrigerator refuses to give me food, automatically order me a Big Mac and French fries, or something like that.
Or give me a new refrigerator.
That'll be how we get around that one. I think we have time for one more. So one more question, right here in the front.
I already have notification overload with my email and Twitter and Facebook and 10,000 other apps always clamoring for my attention. Is this just going to make things worse, or is there a way that you see that you can actually use this technology to make things better?
Sure. I think things are going to get worse before they get better. Notifications are such a powerful driver of engagement for certain services or any service, really. I think one of the opportunities that IFT has is to give you some personal control over when and how and where you get those notifications. And it starts to detach the control panel for when and how you get those notifications from just being in iOS or just being in email or just being in Facebook. There's no real true centralized place. I think the phone comes close, but you get notifications all over the place. It's not just your phone, and I think increasingly it's going to be your watch, your glasses, who knows what else. And I think one of our opportunities is to really put that in one place and give people really fine-grained control, or as much control as they want. Try to make that intuitive. And so if they don't really want to take control, they still have a good experience with whatever the defaults are or whatever we can recommend for them.
All right, we're out of time. Linden, thanks very much.
All right.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate
John.
the chance to talk to you. Thanks, everyone.